Good morning. It is Wednesday, halfway through the week. Well, at least at lunchtime it will be. It's been an interesting week already. Lots of out-of-character stuff going on, and a little bit of in-character stuff for the Monday game in the Skype chat. Lots of busy times at work. A very good Tuesday game that I get to play in. It's nice to be a player sometimes. And lots of thinking about what to use as today's topic. So, for anyone of you that's in your 20s, or I suppose less, I'm probably going to confuse you a bit today. Because today I'm going to talk about Dungeon and Dragon. Now, there will be a subset of you out there that think, don't you talk about that every day? But I normally talk about Dungeons and Dragons. Notice the plurals. Talking about Dungeon and Dragon has to go back a few years. You see, before the internet, there was a time before the internet, there were these things called magazines. And Dungeons and Dragons, or at the time TSR, used to publish 2 of them every month. They published a magazine called Dungeon. And then 2 weeks later, they published a magazine called Dragon. And then 2 weeks later, you're into the next month, and Dungeon comes out, and Dragon comes out. Yeah, you were waiting 2 weeks between updates. It's insane if you think about today's world, that this was the equivalent that we had of websites, of forums, of message boards. We had magazines that you got every 2 weeks. And these magazines contained a trove of all things D&D. Dungeon magazine specifically targeted dungeon masters. It was monsters. It was maps. It was trap ideas. It was ways to deal with problem players. They had articles on all kinds of things, but all of them targeted towards helping people DM. Dragon, on the other hand, was targeted towards player options, new classes, new races, new ways to use your abilities, maybe even some new weapon ideas, that kind of thing. And then spaced between all of this was other articles about the game, upcoming products, upcoming conventions, news about people who worked for the game. It was, in effect, the closest thing we had to a website. And it was printed on paper every 2 weeks and sent out to you in the post, which is like a really slow version of the internet for those of you. And these magazines took a lot of flack. And they also had a lot of devout followers. They were very divisive. Because a lot of people claimed that things that existed in Dragon magazine, you never really heard people mention much about Dungeon magazine. I don't know why. But people would always mention that things presented in Dragon magazine were overpowered. I disagree, but it happened. So, bear in mind as well that whenever I say people complained, this is pre-internet. So when they're complaining, they are either having to physically write a letter, mail it through the post to Dragon magazine, and hope they publish it in the letters section at the back of the book, or they're complaining down at their local game shop while they're buying more books. That was really the only two places you had to complain at the time. But there was never a time you'd walk into the local game shop and not hear someone complaining about some OP class that someone's tried to play out of Dragon. And usually overpower just meant that the DM didn't know enough about it to deal with it properly. Because anything can be balanced with enough knowledge. But the main thing I wanted to say is that there was a time when that was all we had. We look around now, and we've got Unearthed Arcana hitting every couple weeks on the website. We've got new stories and adventures popping up on the website. We have the DM's Guild with thousands upon thousands upon thousands of items. Some of them good, some of them bad, some of them overpowered, some of them underpowered. Whatever. We have dozens of websites that offer homebrew content. D&D Wiki and the other big ones lose my mind at the moment. But, we have all of these sites that offer all of this content. And yet we complain about it. And I'm as guilty as the next person. I complain a lot. It's kind of one of my hobbies. If you put it in D&D terms, I would have expertise in complaining. That's me. I get that. I accept it, I get it, I move on. It's been a long week already. But I keep thinking back now to the simpler times when you got a magazine and that was your content to digest for the month. And if you were lucky enough to have a subscription to it, it arrived on the same day every month. You could mark it on the calendar, and you looked forward to that day when you could then devour all of that new content. And the amount of content that was provided was enough that if you really tried, which if you were a subscriber, why wouldn't you try? You could get through the majority of that content the day you got it. Because, well, you'd been waiting 2 weeks for it. The sun's really bad today. So yeah, we overlook how lucky we are sometimes now with all of the content we have. And that spurs us on to think about how quick we are to label something as overpowered. And I think really that's the meat of what I should be talking about here. The fact that people have been talking about things being overpowered for decades. It's always been the way of games. Something comes out, someone does something really cool with it, and someone says it's overpowered. Things being overpowered is usually what makes players have fun. I mean, there is a certain type of campaign that works when you are the weakling clawing your way up from the bottom. But even in that, the goal is to become overpowered. The trick is balance. Make sure that you as a DM know what you're putting into the game. Make sure that you know what your players can do. And be ready for it. I mean, yeah, you're going to slip up from time to time. I slipped up on Monday. I had forgotten that one of my players had a spell that did times 10 damage in space. If I had remembered that spell, I would have set up that space encounter a bit differently. Actually, no, I may not have, because it was never designed to be a difficult encounter. It was designed to be a little bit more than what it turned out to be, but it was never really designed to challenge them greatly. It was designed to present them with a moral dilemma. I put a jackass in front of them. He didn't actually do anything. He did a lot of blustering. He did a lot of talking. He even took one backhand swing. But he never drew weapons. He never did anything that was really evil, really wrong, really... he never actually did anything that was lethal. I'll put it that way. Like I said, he backhanded. He tried to backhand a guy and missed. He shouted. He raved. He carried on with, verbal threats. And then the group attacked him. Well, one specific member of the group attacked him. Anyway, that's a whole different topic. If you can find digital copies of Dungeon Magazine and Dragon Magazine, I highly recommend it. Dungeon especially. Some of the maps and trap ideas in there were just insidious. I love them. Dragon has some interesting stuff. Most of it obviously is for older editions, so it would need some conversion to bring it up to 5e. But if you're happy doing conversions, lots of content to digest in there, lots of ideas to pull from. Yeah, and I'll leave it at that today. If you can find them, look them up. Obviously, if you enjoyed this video, if you survived to the end of my rant, like, subscribe, all that stuff. Check the links. They go through to some other cool sites on YouTube. And I will see you back here again tomorrow.